It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
We are delighted to welcome to our newsmaker line right now the former ambassador to Denmark from the United States, Carla Sands. Welcome, Carla.
Hi, Michael. It's great to talk to you.
Well, you had a terrific op-ed in the Washington Times about Greenland and President Trump's desire to acquire Greenland for national security purposes. The title of the op-ed was "Mind the Gap." We need to mind the gap. What gap are you talking about there, Ambassador Sands?
Well, in reality, I'm actually talking about the GI-UK gap, and maybe your listeners have never heard of that before, but those letters stand for Greenland, Iceland, and the UK. And it's a giant area of open sea that has been historically in the 21st century largely unprotected by the U.S. And Russia's been playing in there, and now China is also playing in that region, and not far away, working to get new transportation routes through the Arctic to cut off about 2 weeks of passage to get goods from Asia to Western Europe and the U.S.
Wow. So there is a very significant national security interest in the United States, either acquiring Greenland or having military control over the defenses of Greenland. When you were the ambassador to Denmark, there were some, I guess, preliminary conversations about this. You have gone to Greenland yourself. Give us the benefit of your experience dealing with the Danish government and visiting Greenland on this particular topic.
Sure, I'm happy to. The Greenlanders have been talking about independence for a long time. They've had something called self-rule since the late 70s, and they have control over their country. This 57,000 people on the world's largest island have control of everything except their own defense and their foreign policy. And those two areas are controlled by Denmark because Denmark has more capabilities to take care of that. But they don't have enough. They have a little, an Arctic military up there, but it's maybe 30 guys. And they have a few...
30 guys is not going to keep the Russians or the Chinese out of Greenland, is it?
Right. Well, they inflate the numbers, but the actual number that's there, it may be 30. Mm-hmm. And at least when I was there, so up until 2021. And then they have several dog sled patrols that are led by, great Danish military and intelligence officers. But the fact is that that's just not going to do it on an area one-third the size of the continental United States. It's gigantic. Yeah. And so they need more than they can actually provide. Even though Denmark just said recently they were going to commit $1.5 billion more toward Arctic security.
To more dog sled guys, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to cut it.
Multiple years, it's not going to cut it. I mean, that won't even pay for, a ship. And so a real ship. I don't mean a small cutter. Mm-hmm. So I think that, they're not capable in any way. It's if you look at Denmark, it's about 5.5 million people, about the size in population and GDP as Colorado. So can you imagine Colorado trying to defend and develop Greenland? Okay, it would never happen. Right. But the might of the United States being the most powerful nation in the world, most capable nation in the world, we can do it, especially with a president like Donald Trump at the helm, because he leads with peace through strength and putting America first. And when you have your eye on the ball, on the goal, which is put America first, everything else falls into place because everybody benefits when we have a strong America. And you can see how the world has fallen apart and the world's on fire because of a weak president. We see it under Joe Biden. We saw it under Barack Obama.
Now, as I understand it, Greenland has a prime minister, all 57,000 people there. You've been there. Yeah. And most of them speak Greenlandic, which is a version of Inuit. Do I have that right?
Yeah, they're related to our Alaskan Inuit people. They're related to the Canadian and Russian Inuit people. And, they're wonderful people. They like to hunt and fish mostly. And Greenlanders, when I asked them what they wanted, they said they want to have success in their mining. They've got a lot of rare earth minerals and energy there, but they want to protect their environment, which America is the best at. And they wanted to have success in their tourism, and they wanted their kids to learn to speak English and be well educated and not end up speaking Chinese as their second language. And so what I did is I set out to see if we could do that while protecting American interests. We have a base up there above the Arctic Circle called Pacific Space Base. President Trump created Space Force, so now it's called Pacific Space Base.
Now, how many times have you visited Greenland yourself?
5 times.
5 times. And it's pretty desolate for the most part, except around the edges, right? It's like 80% is covered by ice.
I've been up on the ice sheet. The National Science Foundation, in coordination with other top universities, does a lot of scientific experiments up on the ice sheet in kind of the middle of the ice-covered part. It is amazing. When you get there, you can't even turn the airplane engines off, because if you do, you will not get back out. They
Yikes.
won't start. It's so cold and the air is so thin. Yes. So those are polar conditions. And the Russians are very adept at operating in these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S., we're working on our capabilities in those harsh conditions. But Russia, for instance, has about 50 icebreakers. Some of them have missiles on them. The U.S. has 2 icebreakers. We are not paying attention to the region in the way we need to.
Mm-hmm.
Both, I will just say, Arctic and Antarctic. China is doing a lot even in the Antarctic, and China looks at this region as they should control it. They call themselves incorrectly a near Arctic nation and literally wrote a paper called the Polar Silk Road. They want to pull the Arctic into their Belt and Road Initiative, and they do that right in Greenland. Yeah.
Question. Apparently they're going to have a referendum on independence in Greenland. I think that's likely.
Yeah, they're having an election this spring. Yeah,
that's likely to pass, don't you think?
I think that Copenhagen University recently did a survey, and I think it was 67% of the Greenlanders said that they wanted to go independent. I was surprised at that, because I thought it would take a couple decades to get there.
They're there now.
They're there now. But I think it's because President Trump was reelected, and they look at this as the opportunity of maybe never coming back again, that they can get real things done.
After they vote for independence, will they then vote to become a territory of the United States?
Well, I don't think they cannot operate on their own. They don't have the capacity.
So that makes some sense.
Most Greenlanders have an education like 7th, 8th grade. They're they're educated in Greenlandic. They have some things to do to make their society better educated. And Governor Dunleavy of Alaska is very interested. His wife is an Alaskan Inuit, and
so there's a connection there.
Yes, absolutely. And he's been amazing, offering to help them with best practices on fisheries, mining, how to set up that.
How to make it work.
Yeah,
last question, Carla. We're running out of time here, and I know you're very busy.
Yes.
When
time. We're excited about the inaugural.
You're going down for that. When will Donald Trump, do you anticipate Donald Trump making you an offer to be part of his administration?
Oh, I don't know. I never get ahead of President Trump, but I know that it was the honor of my lifetime to serve him in his first administration.
Next time I talk to him, I'm going to highly recommend that he add you to the administration.
You're the best, Michael.
Carla Sands, former ambassador to Denmark for the United States. Carla, thank you so much. Great stuff. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
Back with more after this.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. You know, every 4 decades or so, there are turning points in history. We are at such a turning point. I would actually say probably the most significant turning point in history since the election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1932 election. And you're in the process of seeing a changing worldview among the majority of Americans. There had been for such a long time this 50-50 split between the Democrats and the Republicans, you know, plus or minus 5% there. The Democrats, however, and their DEI policies have revealed themselves to be utterly inconsistent with common sense. And there's just a dearth of leadership and ideas among Democrats. And you see that as well. I think the most, of course, the hearings on Hegseth and the craziness of the liberal Democrat attacks on Hegseth is yesterday's example, but there's an ongoing example of this in the way that the elected Democrat officials in California have mismanaged to a terrible degree the fires in Los Angeles. And I want to talk let's talk about the problem of DEI. When Pete Hegseth talked about, standards should be applied equally, but it ought not to be equitable, because if it's equitable, that means certain preferred groups have lower standards of performance. There is nothing that illustrates it more than the clip that you've probably seen of this assistant fire chief in L.A. who makes like $300,000 a year, who is one of the trio, shall we say? I was going to say threesome, but no, the trio of lesbian leaders at the Los Angeles Fire Department. I mean, like the chief is a lesbian, the assistant chief is lesbian, the other one's a lesbian, and they don't look like, they don't look like the epitome of fitness, shall we say. Got a few extra lbs on them. And so here's the assistant fire chief talking about, you're talking about a standard of being able to lift somebody and carry them out of the fire. Well, this is an example of not an equal standard, but an equitable standard. Here we go. The assistant fire chief in Los Angeles talking about not carrying somebody out of a burning fire. Here we go.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Okay, like, I suppose that's a comedy line from a comedian in front of a politically correct audience, right? But it's a stupid line because, people of all sorts are incapacitated in fires, and you need a fireman who's got the strength to carry you out. And that's an example of equitable versus equal. And that's one of the reasons why Los Angeles it turned into such a disaster in this fire. Now, another example of this, we have this firsthand report, this clip 14, about how slow the Los Angeles Fire Department was responding to the initial report of a fire in Pacific Palisades. Here we go, clip 14.
They claim they didn't see any response until 45 minutes after they called 911.
It's hard to believe, Elizabeth, but I wouldn't have believed it either until I saw the video. You know, Michael Valentine, he's a former U.S. attorney for 8 years under Kamala Harris. He and his wife, they live at the top of Pacific Palisades, right next to this ridge line where the fire broke out. He says his wife called at 10:29 a.m. Tuesday morning. That's when they first saw it, and they didn't see anybody come for at least about a half an hour, 45 minutes before they dropped some water. He documented it all on video, giving News Nation an exclusive look of where it started and how quickly it grew. By 10:50, the plume had spread considerably, twice as large. 8 minutes later, the size of the fire seems to have doubled yet again. Still nobody fighting the fire. At 11:13 a.m., nearly 45 minutes after Michael's wife called in the fire, you see a chopper come through. At 11:23, a helicopter comes in, begins to dump water on it. But at this point, the fire is massive and moving quickly down this ridgeline.
Okay, so again, all of these failures. They knew the Santa Ana winds have created fire hazards in Southern California for, thousands of years. It's been known since the Spanish went there in 1700s. The Native Americans who lived there before were well aware of the dangers. The Los Angeles Fire Department coulda, woulda, shoulda. And what they could have done, knowing this risk was there, is they should have pre-positioned fire trucks all around the area because they had warning, like 24 hours or even more than that, of warning that this could happen. Michael Schellenberger, who is a terrific reporter based in Northern California, had this report documenting it. Here we go, clip 12.
All right, so what are you hearing about what people are saying out there, Mike? You've done some reporting.
Well, good to be with you, Jesse. I mean, the firefighters themselves have been demoralized by what's going on. They know how to do their job, and they hadn't been allowed to do it. They should have been mobilized as early as January 3rd. They got the first warning from the National Weather Service on January 2nd. January 3rd, they got a second warning from the LA National Weather Service. Karen Bass flew to Ghana on the 3rd. The National Guard should have been called out then. They should have stationed fire engines in strategic places around Los Angeles. Jesse, there's 100 fire engines that are in the shop for repair at this moment that should have been repaired and should have been stationed around LA. They've been demoralized. Funding's been cut. They have twice as many calls per day from the fire department, half of them to put out fires by the homeless, and their staffing is down by a third. They were demoralized before this crisis. These are the people that we should be raising up and celebrating. They've just been demoralized by the terrible governance and lack of leadership at the state and local level.
Yeah, let me come back to that here because the Schellenberger guy is really good. Actually, we'll come to another clip a little bit after this. We'll get clip 13 ready on this. But here's a point. The firemen who are fighting the fires, they know what has to happen, and yet they have not just one hand. It's like they have two hands tied behind their backs because the leadership there thinks what is their job? Their job is to talk about DEI and do stupid commercials about, well, if your husband is there at a fire, it's his problem because I shouldn't have to carry him out. He shouldn't put himself in that position. That's the kind of thinking there. And it just results in a disaster. Let me put a contrast here. Can-do attitude. Mark Andreessen, a venture capitalist based in the Bay Area, talking about the Donald Trump approach to things, how you get things done. Here we go, clip 13.
My analysis would be he is world-class on real estate and on communications. And those are sort of his foundational skills. And those are, he's world-class on both, which is like probably the first person in the world to be world-class on both of those things, right? The real estate industry is not historically known for its great communicators. Here you've got somebody who does both of those things incredibly well. he, as a consequence of his knowledge of real estate, and by the way, his also involvement in the communications industry, where he was, one of the huge winners of the last 20 years with what he did on, with what The Apprentice, which is a very large business. He very, very deeply understands business. And, as you know, one of the questions always, in Washington is like, wow, there's a lot of lawyers running around, and wow, there are very few people here who have actually held a job in the private sector, and there are very few people here who have ever actually run a company or been responsible to investors or had customers, right? And so he is also one of the most successful business people, of our time. So, I would say those are like three very powerful skills. Okay. And then I think what you learn, especially when you're good, for sure when you're good at real estate and when you're generally good at business as he is, I think you learn how to do, what we call systems thinking. Like you have to, these large real estate, my father-in-law was sort of a Trump, kind of generational peer in real estate. And
John Arriaga.
Yes. And like talking to John, like when John put up one of these towers or one of these campuses, or when Trump put up, one of these giant hotels or whatever, like these are large scale systems projects. Like, there's many, many dimensions. There's many things that can go wrong. There's a lot of things that have to line up. There's huge management complexity to it. By the way, there is technology
Okay,
change.
and so let's just talk about this. Why did I bring that up? That is an approach to solving problems and big political issues. That's the way to do it. It is not the way Democrats do it. What do Democrats do? They say, oh, there's a problem, and they do a press release. They don't do anything to solve the problem. Los Angeles is getting tired of it. California is getting tired of it. The entire country has been tired of it for a long time. That's why we're just 5 days from President Donald J. Trump. We'll be back with Tom Pappert after this.
My fellow Americans, I was this close, very close, to buying from the lumber yards. These are sick people. But I turned my head at the last second, and I saw a big, beautiful ad for D.T. McCall's. These are highly respected people. If I had not turned my head at the last second, I would have been ripped off at some lumberyard for $200 in hidden charges, and D.T. McCall & Sons are never going to do that. They'd never do that to you. These are great people. I've known them for a long time. They have great deals, and I just have to say, nobody knows deals like I do. D.T. McCall & Sons has locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, and they have been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years. These are tremendous people. D.T. McCall & Sons. Check out one of their stores today.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. On our Zoom Newsmaker line right now, our lead political reporter for the Star News Network and the Tennessee Star, Tom Pappert. Welcome, Tom.
Good morning, Michael.
I have a curveball for you. You ready?
Okay.
Breaking news from Governor Bill Leahy. Let me just read this to you, and then we'll get your response to it. Today, Governor Bill Leahy announced that he will call for the Tennessee General Assembly to convene a special session on Monday, January 27th, to pass the Education Freedom Act. Additionally, the governor will introduce a disaster relief legislative package addressing necessary recovery needs for Hurricane Helene in East Tennessee, as well as future natural disasters. The session will also address public safety measures regarding illegal immigration, as the incoming Trump administration has called on states to prepare for policy implementation. Now, I don't know if you saw that, but that just literally just broke. Let me give you my reaction to it and then get your response. I think and the way it works here in Tennessee, just for our listeners. So today and yesterday, they've had what's called an organizational session, where they agree on the rules for the General Assembly. And then they are scheduled to hold the regular session of the General Assembly, I think on February 3rd. I'll go all of February, all of March, all of April, and they'll address a whole array of issues, the budget, etc. A special session is called by the governor to address usually one particular thing or several particular things. And the governor has that authority. If this special session begins January 27th and the regular session of the General Assembly begins a week later, you would think that all this would be jammed into that 5-day period or the 7-day period. I think, here's my take on it. When you hold a special session, really you're best off focusing on just one thing. And in this instance, although they're saying the lead is to pass the Education Freedom Act, that's the voucher program, educational savings accounts for 20,000 Tennesseans. But they say additionally, they'll do disaster relief for East Tennessee, and additionally, they'll do public safety measures regarding illegal immigration to help the Trump administration. Those second two are important things. But to me, I think that's distracting. If the governor had called me and asked for my advice, which he has never done, by the way, I've offered it for free on occasion, right? I would have said, focus on the main thing. And to me, the main thing, the governor's legacy as he enters the last 2 years of his second and final term, is to get that Education Freedom Act passed. What are your thoughts on this, Tom Pappert?
Well, I do agree it's a little bit maybe distracting, but I think maybe this is the Governor Bill Leahy trying to be tactical. You know, there are still a few Republican holdouts who seem to think, for whatever reason, that their constituents don't want school choice. Every Republican in the country wants it, from President Trump on down to your local dog catcher, but these guys are still skeptical. But I think they're going to be a little bit less skeptical about immigration or, say, disaster relief. So I think this is maybe the governor trying to bulletproof this special session a little bit and make it a little bit more difficult to object to. But it is very interesting. I remember on this very show, I think less than a year ago, you declared Governor Bill Lee a lame duck. And so I think this is going to be his final opportunity to really create a legacy in his final year. And I think he's going to throw everything he can at the wall to make sure it sticks.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis. And I do think it, as always, keenly perceptive on your part about some of the lingering opposition to a school choice, particularly as it comes from rural legislators who are in areas where the school district, the public school district, is the largest employer, and where the school superintendents and the school boards like that local education monopoly. I saw, and there are a couple things interesting in that regard, in Blount County, which is in East Tennessee, the school board there passed a resolution opposing vouchers for that reason. I saw also in Hamilton County, which is a Chattanooga area, there was a gathering of people opposed to the school choice bill, mostly a bunch of Democrats. But the point is that you're quite right that, you know, it's very interesting about Tennessee, which, by the way, is the greatest state in the union. You know, we must say that. Don't say it enough, perhaps. But there is this sort of monopolistic legacy of the good old boy network in these areas, the rural areas, where the power is in, the school superintendent used to be elected, and it was a political office. And it's sort of lingering there. School board, if you want to get elected in a rural area, it is important to have good relations with the teachers and the teachers union, and even if you're a Republican. So there's some of that. So I do think there may be a little bit of horse trading going on here. But what I don't know, and I think you'll be able to identify for us in this special session, Universal School Choice, the Education Freedom Act, the same bill has been prepared and is being submitted, the very same bill with no changes, and with some benefits, bonuses for school teachers in the public school system. That bill is going in lockstep in state Senate and state House. I think if that's the number one priority and they focus on it, I think they've got a real good shot of having that pass. And we'll see on the other things. I don't know if there is a single bill to address hurricane relief in both houses. I don't know if there's a single bill to address the immigration issues before both houses. That would be something that I'm sure you'll be investigating.
Well, absolutely. And I look at legislation almost every day trying to see what is new and what's been submitted. And you're correct. I don't think there is just one article on either topic. There's, of course, on immigration. I think you have two or three. The most prominent and well recognized would be Todd Warner's proposal to essentially release illegal immigrants, if the ICE won't take them, to release them in sanctuary cities.
Which, by the way, we've talked about, and it fits in my category of bad ideas, but go ahead. I mean, really.
But that's the main one.
Yeah.
That's about the only real dedicated immigration bill that comes to the top of my head. I'll be interested to research today and find out if there's anything else. Maybe something will be submitted today now that Governor Bill Lee.
So let me tell you what the governor has said in his press release that went out about an hour and a half ago. On public safety and immigration, they say the General Assembly will consider public safety measures related to illegal immigration to ensure the state is prepared for federal policy implementation. Last year, Governor Lee directed key state agencies to begin making preparations and stand ready on day one of the Trump administration to support efforts. That's kind of vague. And then there's more detail on the hurricane relief proposals, which looks like the governor's got some very specifics that he wants to work on. So anyways, that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. There are about, let's just say, the Education Freedom Act is going to sail through the state Senate. With regards to the House of Representatives, that's going to be a little bit different. You know, I think it's like 75 Republicans, 24 Democrats in the House. But I think also, Tom, that there are about 10 or so rural Republican legislators who haven't committed one way or the other. And if you did a whip count right now, I mean, they need 50 votes. They're probably somewhere between 49 and 55 right now. And we're going to invite a lot of these in the next 2 weeks or so. We're going to invite a lot of these sort of on the fence guys and sort of find out, where they are. So that's the curveball, but you're on top of it. Let's talk about what the House of Representatives did yesterday. I think they were following the lead of the Tennessee House in this matter, which said, got to stop men or boys in girls' sports. Tell us what the House of Representatives did. Tell us and tell us whether or not you think the Senate is going to pass such legislation as well.
Well, it's a very interesting time here at the beginning of the Trump administration. Yesterday, I'm guessing you're referring to the passing of the Protection and Women and Girls in Sports Act, which was passed in the U.S. House. This would amend Title IX. This is the infamous Title IX that President Joe Biden tried to demand schools allow transgender people to play on the team that they decide to identify as the same gender as. Well, this would do the opposite. This would codify once and for all that men play with men and women play with women, and if you put on a dress or if you put on a tight-fitting shirt, that does not mean that you change genders. And this would protect women's sports from the middle school level all the way up to collegiate.
Tom, that's breaking news. If a man puts on a dress, it doesn't mean that he's changed genders.
Very controversial stuff in this Trump administration, but I think it has a chance of passing. I do think the Senate has a chance of passing this, and I think it's going to be one of the real landmark things that could be done in the opening days to mark Trump's first 100 days in office.
Yeah, I agree, because as you know, politically, right? Politically, all of the ads that Trump did against transgenders competing in women's sports were very effective, very effective. And I think that the Democrat senators, although, they're how would you describe the Democrat senators? They're stuck in 2018. They've got a certain mindset. Very few of them seem to be able to think beyond that. They're intelligent in a clever, self-interested sort of way, but I don't think they're really intelligent in a way looking at the big picture. But nonetheless, it would seem to me it's right now right now as we speak, 52 Republican senators, 47 Democrats, and we're all waiting on Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio, to make his appointment. And by the way, we had Tom Zalestowski on here on Monday, and his prediction was on Monday, within 24 hours, DeWine would make an appointment. It's 48 hours. DeWine, what you doing? Appoint somebody, right?
Well, I think even the most squishy Republican he appoints is going to have a hard time saying anything wrong about the transgender issue. I think this is really an 85-15 issue. That's why that's why Governor Glenn Youngkin sailed to the executive mansion in Virginia on it in 2021. That's why Trump put the video out. She's with they, them, I'm with you ad. I think it's going to work out well.
Tom Pappert, great reporting. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. Anytime.
All right. Well, the more we get back, this is the Michael Patrick Leahy Show.
Hey, I'm Governor Bill Lee, and I want to talk to you about an important education bill in Tennessee. Everyone knows that education has the power to change the trajectory of a child's life forever. And anyone who's raised a child knows that each one's different in their educational needs, and their learning styles, and their talents. The fact is, parents know their own children best. They know what's best for their education and their future. That's why I'm here to talk to you about Tennessee's Education Freedom Act. It empowers parents across our state to use their tax dollars to choose the school that allows their child to thrive, regardless of zip code or income, all while making significant investments in Tennessee's public education. If you want to learn how you can help make the Education Freedom Act a reality in Tennessee, go to educationfreedomact.com and write or call your state representatives. It's educationfreedomact.com.
This ad is paid for by Job Creators Network.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. We're going to continue. We didn't have a chance to talk to Tom Pappert enough about this great success yesterday in the House of Representatives of the United States, where they voted, I think it was 218 to 206. They got one Democrat to vote for it. We basically said, we're not going to allow men to compete in women's sports, boys to compete in girls' sports. It's common sense, right? What I found interesting about it is every Democrat, totally misrepresented what it was about. And they were hysterical. I mean, the Democrats are basically hysterical to begin with, right? But they had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez opposing this. She wants boys to compete in women's sports. I don't think she ever competed in a women's sport in high school. And look, way back when I was in high school, it was the first time we kind of got women's sports going. And in my little high school in upstate New York, Randolph, New York, one of our assistant coaches, the great Bob Edgar, great guy, who was a big supporter of local sports, he organized the first women's basketball team. Girls basketball team. My sister was on it, and it was terrific. And all of the guys there, all the boys there were very supportive of it because, sport is great, but you need to have a fair playing field. And the idea that, one of the guys back then would have, competed against girls was just unfair and just ridiculous. And so that's obviously the approach that I take to all this. Riley Gaines is a Tennessean, of whom we're very proud, a great swimmer, swam for the University of Kentucky. And of course, she she lost a medal because of, even though she tied this transgender boy, guy, whatever. I even forget his name. But the point is, she's been a very strong advocate for women's rights, and that is keeping boys out of girls' sports. Here's a clip of Riley talking about this yesterday.
I am an ambassador for Independent Women's Voice. I am the vice chair of Athletes for America with America First Policy Institute. And I'm a former collegiate swimmer from the University of Kentucky. First, and let me echo Speaker Johnson's gratitude for the people who stand alongside me, behind me, their leadership on this issue, how they have stood firm, the flack that you all have taken. I know it's not easy, but nonetheless, it's necessary, and I would argue that it's urgent. And so I thank you all. And I'm thrilled with the passage of H.R. 28, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. But truthfully, I'm mad. I'm mad that this is something we have to do. I'm mad that we as women have to beg for equal rights. I'm mad that we have to beg for privacy in areas of undressing. And I'm mad that we have to beg for safety on the court or on the field or walking in the streets at night, for that matter. Here's some of the things. Let's just go through a couple of the things we heard on the House floor today from Democrats.
Let me just pause it here for a moment. Okay, we don't have all the clips, but you're about to hear from Riley Gaines all of the stupid, nonsensical arguments made by haranguing Democrats who are trying to subvert or perhaps pervert logic on this issue. Here we go.
Exams We heard that girls will be asked to show what's in their underwear. We heard that they have to show internal and external anatomy, inspections, Taliban-like enforcers, hire predators to peek at girls, on and on and on. Weird fear-mongering about predators. But that's what Democrats do best. If you don't know what they're up to, just look at what they're accusing the right of. There have only been a few girls. Another thing they said, there's only a few girls who have been injured at the hands of a boy. It's such a small percentage. I heard that this bill is a waste of time. And let me tell you the message I received when I heard that is that I'm a waste of time. Girls around the country, just like me, are a waste of time. Your daughters are a waste of time to all House Democrats except the 2 who voted in favor of the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. But to Speaker Johnson's point, the American people spoke on November 5th. The common sense, everyday Americans who intuitively know that men and women are different. We reject this notion. While I certainly believe people turned out to the polls to embrace Donald Trump, to embrace his cabinet picks, to embrace the America First agenda, more so, truthfully, I believe that people turned out to the polls on November 5th to reject absurdity. And that is entirely and thoroughly what the Democratic Party has become, absurd.
Let me just stop here. She's completely right in that regard. By the way, she's very impressive. I think she's, only 25 now? And, a world-class swimmer, won a lot of awards, NCAA awards at the University of Kentucky. I think, not that she's been sidetracked, but this issue has then become her issue. Very articulate. There has been some discussion that Riley Gaines might possibly consider running for the House of Representatives here in Tennessee. I think she'd be a good candidate. There's currently no openings. However, she could do it. She'd be a very effective candidate. I think she might be more effective, just as Robbie Starbuck is more effective as a social media person. She might be more effective just as a national spokesperson because she's very, very good. When we come back, Crom Carmichael joins us in the Tennessee Bonus Hour. We're going to talk about Governor Bill Lee's special session. All the details. We got more details about what's in it, and we'll get to Crom's reaction to that. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy. Go to our website, TennesseeStar.com.